The story begins inside a packed, roaring arena. Sammy, a seasoned cornerman and veteran trainer, grips the tense shoulders of his fighter, Patton. Sammy looks him dead in the eye and tells him that tonight, only 2 people in this entire building believe he can win. Everyone else has placed their bets on his much larger opponent. A man Sammy promises will completely crumble the second Patton hits him. To center him, Sammy drills Patton's ultimate mantra into his head. Breathe, think, win. Patton repeats the words, his fists tightly clenched, his voice growing so loud it practically shakes the arena walls. Right behind them, Patton's younger brother, Malone, cheers him toward the cage. Patton looks back at Malone, telling him that this monumental moment belongs to both of them. The roaring crowd fades, and the scene abruptly shifts to a grim reality. We are on a battered fishing trawler, violently tossed by a heavy storm. The gruff skipper, Neil, barks aggressive orders as the exhausted crew hauls heavy traps aboard. Back on the dreary dock, the reality of the catch is grim. They have fallen short of their quota yet again. Neil hands out the meager pay, a pathetic $400 split between the men after a brutal week of labor. To make matters worse, Patton lost one of the traps because an old rope snapped. An irritated Neil calls Patton a curse on the vessel and a magnet for bad luck. Showing some mercy, Patton's crewmate splits the difference, ensuring both men walk away with $300. Later that evening, Patton returns home to his young daughter Maddie and his wife, Luciana. The financial strain is heavy. Luciana tells him that Maddie needs to see a specialist. A conversation interrupted when Maddie suddenly repeats a swear word she learned directly from Patton, leaving Luciana deeply unimpressed. After tucking their daughter into bed, the couple sits down. Patton heavily admits that rent is due and the fishing has been dry for weeks. Luciana desperately offers to pick up extra work shifts. But Patton insists she must focus on her exams, reminding her that taking care of Maddie is already a full-time job. Luciana hesitates, then drops unexpected news. She is pregnant. Patton freezes in shock. But then a massive smile breaks across his face, and he laughs, pulling his wife in for a tight embrace. Back on the dreary fishing boat, Neil complains bitterly about another empty hull. He suggests they just start growing weed, exactly like his cousin in Goulburn. However, Neil's cousin is currently rotting in jail for that exact crime, so Patton flatly declines. He reminds Neil that he has a family to protect and a new baby on the way. The skipper, overhearing the exchange, fires Patton on the spot, calling him a Jonah who brings nothing but bad luck. Patton's fists clench. He nearly charges the skipper, but stops himself, walking away as insults hurl against his back. That night, Luciana asks Patton if he is okay. Hiding his termination, he lies and says he is fine. After she heads to bed, Patton sits alone in the dark, watching the television. The commentator is hyping a massive main event. Patton's younger brother, Malone, is fighting a brutal competitor named Xavier Growl. Malone presses forward aggressively, but Xavier expertly baits him in, springing a vicious trap and dropping Malone out cold. The referee waves the fight off, but Xavier ignores him, landing a devastating UHL, illegal shot on the unconscious fighter. Sammy can be heard screaming for Xavier to stop as officials frantically swarm the cage. Later that night, Nadine Malone's wife arrives at Patton's door, distraught and apologizing for the late visit. Patton welcomes her in and introduces her to Maddie, though Luciana quickly ushers the child away from the tense atmosphere. Nadine delivers horrific news. Malone is in a coma with a dangerous blood clot on his brain. Patton tries to reassure her, insisting that his brother is tough enough to pull through. At the hospital, the atmosphere is heavy. Gabriel Stone, Xavier Growl's ruthless manager, tracks Patton down to a vending machine. Gabriel admits he studied all of Patton's old fights, calling him an absolute beast who is far superior to Malone. Leveraging the tragedy, Gabriel offers Patton $75,000 to fight Xavier. Patton immediately refuses, but Gabriel keeps raising the price, aggressively pitching the revenge angle, and warning Patton that Malone has mounting debts that need immediate attention. With a final push, Gabriel hands a business card to little Maddie to give to her father, then walks away. A doctor informs the family that Malone is stable, but requires deep rest. Patton pulls Nadine aside, demanding to know how much Malone actually owes. Nadine tearfully admits Malone borrowed $50,000 from Barry Dunn, a highly dangerous loan shark, to cover his training and appearances. Back home, Patton confesses the massive $100,000 fight offer to Luciana. She asks point blank if he wants to take it. He insists he said no, but she sees right through his lie. She firmly reminds him what a coma would mean for their daughter. The next day, Don, a fight podcast host, interviews Xavier Grau. Xavier dismisses the accusations regarding his illegal hit, arrogantly claiming Malone was begging for a beating. Don then shifts the topic to Patton James, reminding Xavier that 11 years ago, Patton knocked Xavier out in just 6 seconds, the fastest knockout in championship history. Enraged, Xavier vows he would destroy Patton in 2 seconds flat today. Patton secretly meets with Gabriel Stone, demanding $150,000 to take the fight. With half paid up front, Gabriel agrees, sliding over the deal memo, but warns that the fight game has evolved. Patton has exactly 7 weeks to prepare, or he will be destroyed. Patton signs the paper and leaves in silence. At a local martial arts gym, Rosami's daughter, and a former 127-pound fighter whose career ended due to a knee injury, can barely recognize Patton when he walks in. She warns him that Sammy will absolutely not want to see him. Patton tells her he desperately needs a trainer for 7 weeks. When Rose learns his opponent is Xavier Grau, she is stunned, but she fiercely volunteers to train him herself. Rose calls Sammy over. Sammy stares at his estranged fighter with cold, dead eyes and says nothing. When Rose demands he respond, Sammy simply tells Patton to get out. Rose follows Patton outside, promising she will work on changing her father's mind, and they agree to meet at dawn for secret training. That night, Patton visits the VIP section of a dark nightclub to find Barry Dunn. Barry, a volatile crime boss, surprisingly vouches for Patton at the door and invites him to reminisce about the old days. Patton cuts the chatter short, slapping down a stack of cash clearing Malone's entire debt plus interest. Barry respects the honorable move. Patton walks out, having removed one massive threat from his family's back. At 5 a.m. the next morning, Patton's alarm rings. He opens his door to find Neil, the 350-pound fishing skipper, standing there. Neil quit the boat and asks to join Patton's fight camp. Despite Neil having zero combat experience, Patton agrees. At the gym, Rose mocks the absurd choice, but sighs and accepts Neil onto the team. Rose drills Patton relentlessly. The years of inactivity show. Patton struggles on the mat, gasping for air, to keep Patton grounded. Rose instructs Neil to grapple with him, and the massive skipper slams Patton to the mat with ease, delivering a deeply humbling start. Later, Rose overrides her father's orders and grants Patton access to Sammy's private space inside the gym. Sammy warns Patton he wouldn't last 30 seconds against Xavier. Patton fires back that he doesn't need 30 seconds. Outside the gym, a recently awakened Malone confronts his older brother. The 5 years of abandonment have fueled Malone's rage. He claims the Xavier fight rightfully belongs to him and viciously insults Patton's past prison sentence. The tension erupts into a physical brawl until Sammy pulls Malone aside, telling him to clear his head. That evening, Luciana spots a fresh bruise on Patton's face. He lies, calling it a work accident. But Luciana already knows the truth about the fight. Patton argues the $150,000 payout is necessary, but she storms out, furious that he broke his solemn promise to never fight again. Back at the gym, Patton is dropping during sparring sessions, but Rose screams at him to get back up. Sammy watches from the doorway, wholly unimpressed. Seeking reconciliation, Patton sits in Sammy's office. Sammy reveals that he mortgaged his own home to build this gym, only to lose it to the bank when Patton went to prison and never showed up on his release day. Patton explains that he fought for his life daily behind bars, and fighting was the absolute last thing he wanted upon release. He only took the Xavier fight to buy his family time. Sammy warns Patton that he is using Rose, and if he has truly grown, he shouldn't be here. In a shocking turn of events, The fighting committee strips Xavier Growl of his title, suspends him for 6 months, and officially cancels the fight with Patton. Xavier storms into Patton's gym, laughing and calling him a myth. He demands they change the venue to a brutal, unsanctioned smoker fight. Patton refuses, reminding Xavier that under their contract, he still owes him the upfront money regardless. Xavier calls him a coward, but Patton doesn't flinch, reminding Xavier of the legendary 6-second knockout. At home, Patton brings Maddie her favorite sushi and tells Luciana the fight is officially off due to a breach of contract, but they get to keep the upfront money. Relieved, Luciana forgives him, and the family shares a warm, peaceful evening. Seeking to heal his fractured family, Patton tracks Malone down at a running track. Malone admits he feels lost. Patton appeals to him, saying Maddie wants her goofy-foot, stubborn, and fearless uncle at her birthday party. Patton finally whispers a sincere apology for walking away years ago. Malone hangs up on him, but later surprises everyone by arriving at Maddie's birthday party with arcade gifts. However, Malone says he can't stay, cryptically telling Patton to keep an eye on the news because something big is coming. Inside Malone's gift to Maddie is a stack of cash. Nadine breaks down and reveals the horrifying truth. Malone is heading to an underground venue to fight Xavier again tonight, completely ignoring the doctors who warned that his brain is still swollen. Patton and Neil race to the underground fight. Inside the ring, Xavier is mercilessly punishing Malone, dragging out the beating to give the roaring crowd their money's worth. Barry, acting as Malone's cornerman, screams for him to stand. Malone absorbs devastating blow after blow, his body failing, but his spirit refusing to quit. Patton and Neil shove through the crowd. When guards block their path, Neil throws heavy punches. Clearing the way, Patton commends Neil's fighting skills. Neil simply replies that fighting is sometimes necessary. They are too late. Inside the ring, Malone takes one final devastating hit and collapses. Patton bursts through the ropes, screaming his brother's name. Malone gasps, convulsing on the bloody canvas. Patton cradles his dying brother in the darkness, completely shattered. A vast cemetery stretches across the landscape. Mourners stand around Malone's black coffin. Tony Lee, a representative from One Championship, offers his condolences and tells Patton they need to talk. Later on the rocky shoreline, Patton shatters a glass bottle, screaming and crying into the night, haunted by the brother he failed to save. Luciana rushes to him, begging him to breathe. Xavier shows no remorse to the press, blaming Patton directly and insisting the fight was always meant for him. Carrying the unbearable weight of guilt, Patton whispers to his wife that it should have been him in that ring. Luciana grabs his face. She tells him she hates fighting, but she commands him to go kick Xavier's ass and come home. Patton returns to Sammy. He says he needs to learn how to breathe so he can think and win. Sammy reveals he turned down the advance for a winner-takes-all championship bout. The old wounds heal as Patton tells his father he loves him. The training montage is fierce. Patton pounds the heavy bag with everything he has while Rose cheers him on. Sammy watches, stunned, as Rose shouts that the old Patton is finally back. Little Maddie calls her grandfather mental, and Sammy grins, replying, "Good." The arena in Bangkok? Thailand is electric. The commentators announce the ultimate grudge match. Patton marches toward the cage with an 11-0 record. Xavier enters, and the two bitter rivals refuse to touch gloves. Pure hatred radiates in the cage. Round 1 erupts. Xavier pins Patton, landing a spinning wheel kick that draws blood. Patton drags Xavier to the mat, surviving a spinning elbow to land a massive right hand that heavily staggers the former champion. In round 2, Xavier reverses a takedown and locks Patton in a brutal rear choke. Seconds away from losing consciousness, Patton hears Sammy's voice cutting through the chaos, urging him to breathe. The bell saves him, but Patton lies motionless. As the referee checks on him, Patton gasps, dragging himself back to his feet. Sammy asks him the plan. Patton replies, "Breathe, think, win." Round 3 begins. Xavier explodes with flying knees, raining down vicious strikes. He lands a dirty shot that drops Patton, causing the crowd to boo. The referee gives Patton 1 minute to recover. Blinded and in agonizing pain, Patton refuses to quit. He charges forward, landing a colossal strike that shatters Xavier's hand. With a roar of vengeance, Patton unleashes a devastating left hook. Xavier Growl crashes to the canvas, out cold. Patton James wins by knockout. Sammy rushes the cage, tears streaming down his face, telling his son he always knew he was a champion. As the announcer declares Patton the new undisputed middleweight champion, and $3 million, Richard Patton grabs the microphone. He looks into the camera, shouting to Luciana and his family, "I'm coming home. I love you." Thanks for watching. If you enjoy the recaps, PLS, like and subscribe. See you in the next recap.